and look, cultures, we know it's not a static thing, right? It's not a snapshot. A culture. A culture changes every single day. It evolves. You hope it changes for good, but things happen, right? Bad things happen that in the short term might knock you back, but can be a growth experience for everybody, and can help you, form a better culture out of it. But it's not a straight line. I am Kevin Corrigan, and I am coached to win.
Go get me some knowledge.
I tell you what, if I grew up in LA, and they didn't have lacrosse when I was growing up. So I was forced to play track, run track. I'm not going to say play track because nobody plays track. They run track. And I didn't even know lacrosse was a sport until I moved out here in 2001 or 2002 and still wasn't paying attention to it. And then once my son started playing it when I was young, I was like, why did we never have this? This is the perfect sport for football players out of season, at least for me. I just loved it.
No doubt. We got a bunch of kids. Yeah, obviously we got 3 kids on our team playing both right now at Notre Dame.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But even beyond that, bunch of guys on our team, like Rick Meyer's son, Mo, played for us, and we've had a bunch of guys who came from the football world, and their dads are like, hey, lacrosse is a great sport, and so.
Yeah, I was wondering if you had the Meyer boys on there, because I know Rick I used to see Rick all the time posting about Notre Dame Lacrosse.
Yeah, Mo played for us. Great kid.
What's it like growing up one of 7 kids? It's the first thing that stood out to me.
You know what? It was the greatest way to grow up of all time. And my dad was a college coach when I was born. In fact, my son's now coaching at Air Force, and when I talk to him about his career, and all the changes that are happening in college sports right now, and I think about, like, I say to him, it's going to be just as different, and as your job eventually is going to be just as different from mine as was from my dad's. And my dad was the head lacrosse coach, the head soccer coach, and the assistant basketball coach at the University of Virginia when I was born. So that's how different college sports were, in the 60s and to where they are now, right?
So the University of Virginia was so cheap that your dad had to work and coach multiple jobs just to make ends meet with your clan of kids, right? That's how cheap the University of Virginia was.
He got out of coaching because he couldn't make enough money in coaching, even coaching 2 sports. He eventually became the sports information director at Virginia, but was still the head lacrosse and head soccer coach and the sports information director. And he got out of coaching because he couldn't make enough money. That's what college sports were like. And now listen, there wasn't all the TV money and all that. There just wasn't all the money around sports back then that there is now, at any level. Shoot, you even think about kids level or anything else, right? So it's completely different world in all of that. But yeah, that was so we grew up, listen, 7 of us in the station wagon, riding around town. My dad and mom were geniuses and letting us know that nobody in the world had it better than we did, and so we wanted for nothing. We were as happy as we could have been,
So can we Goodwill Hunting this real quick? Can you name all your brothers and sisters real quick? Bam, give me a Goodwill Hunting scene right now. Name all your brothers and sisters. Can you do it?
Louise is the oldest, and we call her Mama Lou because she was like a second mother. As the kids got younger, mom had to have help. So Louise, and then Kathy, and then the 5 boys: David, then me, then Brian, Tim, and Boo.
Okay. All right. So I'm assuming you got 2 girls at pole position. Then you have 5 straight boys.
Yep.
What was the atmosphere and competition and fight? What was that like growing up with all those kids, with a dad who was in athletics in every way, shape, and form, and here you guys are just watching him, observing him, or challenging him in some way? What was that like?
Listen, it was, big families are messy but in a fun way. I don't mean anything, tragic, but just, there's always fights. You're always
Yeah.
competing for something, right? I mean, listen, dinner every night was a competition. If you got finished first, you might get seconds. And so, there wasn't much. It wasn't a competition in our house, I think, at that time.
Yeah, I tell my mom that all the time. I'm the youngest of four, three boys, one girl. And I was teasing her one day. I did this interview and I said how I had to compete for food because I was the youngest. And she got so mad. You never had to fight for food. I always made sure there was enough. I was teasing. But as a kid, it did feel like that when my older brothers and sisters, they would eat quicker than I would. And I realized if I didn't hurry up and throw my food down my throat, I wasn't going to get extras. And it has translated itself into my adult life. Because when I go out with my wife, she always asks me, why do you eat so fast? I was like, well, because I've been conditioned to eat fast. I may not get any more.
You know what? My wife and kids go the other way. They give me a hard time for eating so slow. And I'm like, hey, because I can now. I don't have to compete for that because listen, my mom would probably feel the same way about that in terms of there being enough, but that didn't mean that you didn't get more gristle than good meat when you went around for those seconds if you were last, right? So
yeah. So you mentioned your dad. Your dad was Gene Corrigan, legendary figure in sports, athletic director, Hall of Fame, Virginia. Athletic director, Notre Dame, NCAA president. I mean, he's done a lot, and so I'm assuming you've seen a lot. What were some of the things that you took from your dad and your mom? I don't want to leave your mom out, right? Because I'm sure it was a team effort with all the kids running around. But you're watching everything that's going on. What was it? What were some of the characteristics that you picked up from your parents?
Oh gosh. Well, first of all, it's hard, the life of sports, and for coaches and everything, it's hard to make time for everything, right?
Yeah.
There's never time for everything, so you kind of have to prioritize what you're doing, and so for us, that meant, at times some of us getting off the bus at my dad's practice, right, or whatever, or when he became an athletic director, and I was still, in my 8, 9, 10 years old. Then hey, on Sunday after church, we went to the gym, and we never thought about it, but he was just going back to work. He had
Yeah.
stuff to do.
Yeah.
We were lucky he worked in a gym. So as far as we were concerned, it was the greatest thing in the world. Right after church, we get to go to the gym and hang out. And we're playing basketball at U Hall and
Yeah.
Charlottesville. But it was a way of them making sure that it all worked. We were never, my mom was amazing. I mean, any mother of 7 kids is on a nonstop treadmill from the moment you wake up and until you go to bed at night. Never satisfy everybody, but always trying. So no, they were unbelievable at making it work and not making it seem like there was some sacrifice or anything else. But the only way they did that was by sacrificing so much themselves.
Yeah. And I'm sure you probably met a lot of, I'm just going to call them historical figures in sports because, your dad is coaching basketball. He's running camps during the summer. Guys coming in, athletes coming in, coaches coming in to speak in that little area, that surrounding area. All the coaches kind of get to the same area. Where were some of the personalities that you met you were a kid?
Besides obviously everybody that coached at the University of Virginia from 1958 to 1990. My dad, as part of trying to make enough money, he started a basketball camp with 4 guys, and this was one of the very first basketball camps in the country. And Bones McKinney, who was an old Wake Forest coach, a great pro player from the early days of the NBA. Weenie Miller, who was the head coach at VMI. Dad got involved because he was the head coach at Washington and Lee before he became the assistant at UVA. And Bill McCann, who was the UVA coach, and they started a Camp Wahoo. And we did this outside of Charlottesville at a little school called Miller School. And about one of the guys that came to that camp early and to work it was a high school coach in West Virginia named Willie Akers, and Willie Akers was best friends with Jerry West. So in about 1964 or so, Jerry got involved in the camp. So Jerry West. So we went to camp every summer for 2-3 weeks with Jerry West, and the people that came through that camp at the time were some of the great basketball coaches in the country. I mean, Press Maravich came and worked the camp, and Pete Maravich, was there as a camper. There, some of all the best ACC coaches were coming through there at the time, and so we got to know some of them who were assistants and became head coaches. We got to know guys like Mike Schuler, who was an assistant at VMI, who eventually became the head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers, but they were just young guys wanting to work a camp, wanting to make a name, wanting to network. In those days, that was how you networked in college coaching, and so yeah, Pat Conroy, the writer, the Citadel coach used to come, and so Pat Conroy was a player at the Citadel, and he came to camp and worked camp. He was a counselor while he was in school at the Citadel, and he's obviously world-renowned author now. But in his book, My Losing Season, there's actually a chapter called Camp Wahoo.
Oh, really?
And okay. It's about coming to Camp Wahoo and working. Yeah.
Wow. What a great story. So do you think that coaching was just in your blood? Do you think it was just inevitable that you were going to be a coach?
I don't know if it was inevitable. I always thought I wanted to be rich. And that didn't work very well with being a coach.
Coaching is the wrong sport to get into back in your day if you want to be rich.
Certainly lacrosse coaching.
Yeah.
I worked some camps. I think it was after my sophomore year of college that I worked some camps. And I think that's when I kind of got hooked on it. I loved working with people, and it was something I loved, and I loved working with them. And then my first year out of college, I helped at a local high school, and that's when I really got hooked on it. And because just some of the things that can happen in the relationships that you have with the kids. And at that age, here I am, 4 or 5 years older than these guys I was coaching. But even then, I knew that was kind of a special relationship and a pretty neat way to go through your workday every day.
So is that what you like about it, the relationship aspect of it?
Yeah, I think you get into it because of the game. You love the game, and you love being part of that locker room and all of that. And then you realize the impact that you can have on people because you're very uniquely positioned. As I just spoke to a class this morning here at Notre Dame. And I was saying, like this guy's a great professor and everybody likes him. And I said, but you may take him one semester. If you're lucky, you take him twice. You see him 3 times a week for 3 months. I have these guys who come and play for us, and we see each other every single day, almost 5 to 7 days a week, and for 4 years, right? So the level of impact is completely different, and for good and bad, right? I mean, you got to be careful. It's a big responsibility because you can screw that up as easily as you can do it well.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you about the burden of responsibility, because you're going into your 37th year at Notre Dame, and I'm assuming they all can't be great stories. They all can't just have happy endings. And what happens when you lose a kid, or the message doesn't get through, or the trust isn't built and the bond isn't created? What do you do then?
That's tough. And just in terms of that responsibility, it's funny. I did a thing out in Denver last weekend. I was out there for a Notre Dame event, and I had 6 former players show up, and we were talking, we were, telling stories and having a lot of fun. But at one point, one of the guys was like, I wish we'd have been better players. And we could have won a national championship and everything. And I'm like, gosh, I wish I was a better coach. I wish I had been able to help you more and do more for you, than I was capable of doing at that time. And I don't think I was, doing a terrible job or anything, but I'd like to think I've gotten better every year that I've been in coaching, because it's the kind of thing you can't help but learn. You
Yeah.
make so many decisions and you see so many unique situations, and whether they're new things that you have to deal with or just variations of an old thing, you learn how to handle things better. You mature. You go through life as a parent, and your parenting informs your coaching, and your coaching informs your parenting, right? And how you deal with kids at a certain age and all that. So, I mean, I feel good. I'm 65 now, Christian. People want to know, when are you going to retire? I'm like, retire? I think I just figured this out.
Exactly.
I'm getting better. I think, I'm not going backwards at this point. So I'm
Because
no interest in talking about retiring.
Because you get to Notre Dame, you're 29 years old. It's 1988. You're the head coach. You're announced the head coach in 1988. I can't imagine many people know who you are, based on the fact that all due respect, coach, but 100%. In 1988, that was a football school. That was a Lou Holtz. That was a basketball, Digger Phelps. I mean, this is Catholics versus convicts. This is national championship. This is touchdown Jesus all day long. How did you intersect and become, I guess, part of the fabric of that school? How long did it take to build what you absolutely have now, which is back-to-back national titles?
I mean, I kind of didn't ever look at it that way. I don't ever, I obviously, I mean, just as a competitor, right? There's, and I say this to our team every year, we don't set goals on how many wins or anything else. Cause I'm like, what, did you ever play a game that you didn't want to win? Did you ever play where your expectation wasn't that you were going to win the game? So setting goals about how many games we're going to win them all. Why would we play them if we weren't going to win them? And why would we compete if we didn't compete with the idea that we were going to win? And I kind of kept that kind of silly mentality from the very beginning. Even when we weren't good enough to win a lot of those games, it's still like, well, you know what? That's why they blow the whistle and we play the game, because you don't know who's going to win in the end. We might win 1 out of 100, but this might be that one, and so I didn't worry about trying to do everything at once. I just tried to say, let's just get to work and let's get better. And then let's add the pieces to a program. We used to bus to every game from South Bend, Indiana. That meant we were busing to Baltimore on a weekend to play a game. And at Notre Dame, they don't let you miss a lot of class.
Yeah.
So we're driving through the night on buses and doing things. And, I can remember telling our business manager, hey, if you just let us fly once a year, I'll never ask you for another. Big a lie as I ever told in my life, because as soon as he gave us one flight, I wanted 2, right?
Yeah.
But we had, we shared a locker room with 3 other teams at Notre Dame. We were busing to every game. There were no scholarships. We didn't even have money for assistant coaches. I was getting guys to come out here and go to, who were in grad school, to come out and help me after they finished school in the afternoon. And I was lucky that there were some guys who were good enough people and passionate about lacrosse that they wanted to do something like that. And so, had a great time doing it. Didn't, again, a little bit goes back to my parents and all that. We didn't sit around wondering and worrying about what we didn't have. We were having fun with what we had, right? And doing the best we could with what we had. But then over time, you start adding those pieces. You get to start to travel better to games. You get assistant coaches. You get scholarships. And now you compete at the highest level. And then you get a stadium, and you get, now you can really kind of have a legitimate chance to say, hey, we're going to compete for a championship every year. That's our goal, and that's what we're capable of doing. But it was never a time where I was just sitting around pining for the things we didn't have. It was just like, let's just go with what we got right now. Working for that next step, but let's have fun and enjoy what we're doing right now.
So how do you keep that? So now you have everything. You got scholarships. You got a lot of national recognition. How do you keep that same mentality, and then spreading it around to your team?
I think part of it is there's an endless quest in my mind of what I'm doing. It's not just winning, but it's what is the absolute best experience that I can create for the student athletes that play for our team, right? And that is something that there's just no limit to what we can do, right? I mean, so whether it's helping guys get jobs, or whether it's, creating a mindset on our team where service becomes not something that you're checking the box and doing, but something that is a lifestyle, and something that they're going to carry on and do the rest of their lives, because they believe in the idea of approaching things with humility and gratitude, and a sense that you owe the world more than the world owes you. um, Trying to create opportunities for our guys in the travel that we do, and in the things that we see, and the people that we meet, the networking with, whether it's Notre Dame people or other people, all of those things. And while you're still pursuing doggedly the competitive side of it, you're also looking at all these things, right? So I had a chance this weekend to meet with a guy who was a Notre Dame professor that I've been trying to connect with for the last 4 or 5 years. He's no longer a Notre Dame professor. He's off doing something else now, but he's doing exactly what interested me in him in the first place. And it was about workplace contentment, workplace satisfaction, workplace, matching your interests and your values, and those with the discernment process to end up where you need to end up professionally as well as personally, right? And I'm thinking, wow, this is a guy that could really help me help all these young men that are in our program. And so I had a chance to have breakfast with him when I was out in Denver last week, and that was super exciting to me, because this is something, that's something new we can add to what we're doing. That's something more we can do for the guys that we have. So and it won't take away from our competitive side. Heck, it probably just makes that better, because the guys that, know that you're investing in them as people as well as athletes. And from your own experience, that, the old saying, nobody cares what you know till they know that you care. And so, anything that we do to help them, recognize that, and is good. It's good for us on all fronts.
So it seems like you're constantly hunting for information, knowledge. It seems like you're always searching for ways that not only you can be better as a coach, and how you can make your players better. That's important to you, right?
Very much so. And try to make me better. God knows I'm a work in progress. I mean, and listen, I consider myself a lifetime learner, because I was such a lousy learner when I was in school, that I like to think that makes me better. But
Yeah.
I really do I like looking for that stuff. I seek that stuff out. I try to again, it's, a personal quest to get better, but also a responsibility that I feel to do my job better, and to be better as a coach and mentor to the people that I work with.
So do you have like a Corrigan way? Are there certain philosophies, phrases that you like to use to get your point across to your team?
I don't know. There's certain things that I say. You probably asked the guys; they could probably tell you more. But there's certain things that we talk about a lot. Egoless clarity is one of them. I don't know if you ever read the book Good to Great, Jim Collins. A great book if you haven't read it. It's
Okay.
a lot of great thoughts in there. But one of the things that really struck me in that is the idea of egoless clarity, because I think if you're on a team, it's one of the most valuable things you can have. Right? It's a great way to accept um, constructive, coaching and stuff like that. Is take your ego out of it, and it's a great way to deal with teammates and everything else. Is to say, hey, to accept what your role is on the team. Take your ego out of it. What's your highest and best value to this team, and accept that, and work at being great at that, as opposed to letting your ego drive you to want something that may not be there for you, or may not be, it may help you, but it doesn't help your team be better, which in a team sport is what it's all about.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. There's that old I don't know why I was thinking about this Ted Lasso quote, the one scene from Ted Lasso where he's playing darts and the guy thinks he's going to beat him, but he has no idea that Ted Lasso used to play darts every week with his dad, and he ended it with "Be curious." It reminds me of kind of your mentality as far as gaining knowledge, and constantly being curious, constantly looking for ways to better yourself and your team. And I wanted to go to like your overall career at Notre Dame. You're there in 1988. You don't have any assistant coaches. They're probably not paying you anything. There's no scholarships. Football is popular. Basketball is popular. Suddenly you start, developing a reputation, and then you start winning, and then you start going to the semifinals, quarterfinals, playing for the national championship, but you just can't quite get there. Something happens and you can't quite get there until your 35th year when you finally win it, and then you win it again. That stretch where you couldn't win it, and you were a great regular season coach with no championship. Did it bug you that you couldn't quite make that next step?
I mean, I'd be lying to say that every single time it happened, I wasn't disappointed. I mean, for 34 years, I was disappointed that we lost the last game because, again, my approach is always we want to win the game we're in, and whether that's the last game of the year or the first game of the year, it doesn't really change. So yeah, there's clearly that disappointment. I hope I had enough perspective to always feel like it was more important to know were we reaching our potential, were we, as a team, and were we helping the guys on the team to reach their potential, and that kept it from being some kind of this crazy obsession that I'm like, oh my God, my life's going to be a failure. I'm gonna retire as a coach and I never won a championship because, God, if that was the truth, there's think of some of the great coaches in history that never won a championship, but were doing a phenomenal job on so many levels. So I'm not saying I'm comparing myself to them. I'm just saying I hope I had the perspective that I didn't have to win a championship to consider myself a success as a coach. I was measuring myself on other things. My brother Tim works with ESPN. He's a producer for ESPN. He does NBA basketball, and so Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson, worked with him for years. They work together because he does the NBA finals and stuff. So those guys used to always have a saying that they said that I stuck in my head, which was, "Hey, it's a make or miss league." Like
It's that
sometimes the
simple.
difference between the champion and the guy who's not the champion is that the champion made one shot that the other guy didn't make, right?
Yeah.
And that's we lost a national championship in overtime. I mean, it's sudden death overtime. You can't come any closer to a championship than that. It's absolutely impossible to be closer than that without winning a championship in the sport of lacrosse. But it's a make or miss league. We didn't make that play and on that day, and somebody else did. And I don't think that made us a lesser team or made us a lesser, lesser in terms of our quest at reaching our potential. But it sure as heck made us not the champion that day.
You win the championship, your first championship, your national championship, and then there's that gap, and then there's this. I'm sure there's these expectations, and the willingness and the desire to repeat. That gap, that from when you win it in May, and then you have the off season and fall ball to when the season starts. What's your approach with your team?
I hope as consistent as it could have been in past years, because the one thing that I've always preached to our guys is that every year is a different entity. And in college sports, even more than the pros, obviously, in college sports, you lose a quarter of your room every year. You gain a new quarter of the room, and everybody in the room is different because of the previous year that they've had, right? So your juniors are now seniors, and the expectations of being leaders, and they're looking out, right? They're looking at what's next after this. They're no longer like, so involved that the team is their world. The juniors are kind of fully engaged and fully in the middle of everything. The sophomores are like, thank God, everything that I do, I'm not doing for the first time. I get to, I kind of know what's going on now, and I can really show what I can do. And your freshmen are all over the spectrum of what freshmen are. So every team is so new every year in college sports. And we always preached it when we had great years, and we preached it when we had bad years, is it doesn't matter. That's the only value that has to you now is as the experience that you learned from. What can you do with what you learned? Because that's what's going to determine this year. What we learned and what we work to do every single day is what's going to determine our fate this year, not what happened last year or the year before. That's irrelevant now. So I hope that approach was the same as it had been. It was a little bit harder to get some people's feet on the ground. And I probably should thank Princeton, who we played in the fall last year, who just absolutely kicked our ass in every way that you can get your butt kicked. They did
a wake up call.
Oh man, and it was like I didn't have to say a whole lot after that. I think our guys knew, that we were feeling a little too good about ourselves, and so that probably didn't hurt any.
Well, so is that why? With that being said, with the turnover, new faces, old faces leaving, is that why a real strong foundation of culture is important for you?
No question. No question. That's you hope that's the one thing that survives. And look, cultures we know it's not a static thing, right? It's not a snapshot. A culture changes every single day. It evolves. It you hope it changes for good. But things happen, right? Bad things happen that in the short term might knock you back, but can be a growth experience for everybody and can help you, form a better culture out of it. But it's not a straight line, right? It's zigzag, and so I'm a North Star guy, right? Just keep heading for the North Star. You can take some wrong turns along the way. It's not a
well. How do you know that you're pushing the right buttons and pulling the right levers in this? How do you know?
You're constantly, that's your constant evaluation every day. And that I think probably as a coach, Christian, there's so much of coaching that you could say is like Groundhog Day, right? That, it's another Tuesday. We got to do this. We got to
rinse and repeat,
yeah. That's the stuff that's fascinating. That's the stuff that's interesting. That and the relationships are the things that make it a really unique, interesting profession and something that you can continue doing at 65 and not feel bored by it or not feel like, oh my God, how do I get myself up for this Tuesday practice? Because you're constantly, between the relationships with the players and trying not to disappoint them and what you're doing with that. And the idea of, all right, what happened yesterday relative to what happened last week, relative to what happened last month, relative to, and putting those pieces together. Now, what is the right button to push right now? Is it, do I need to get on guys? Do I, the traditional thing is after a win, you can be harder on your team. After a loss, you got to back off a little bit so you don't ruin their confidence. But that's not always true, and you have to know your group and you have to have a read on them to know how to treat them on a day-to-day basis and what buttons to push. And that's fun. That's interesting.
Well, so how do you get to, if you have all these guys, 50 guys, I don't know, give or take a few, depending on the year, how do you get to know them? Because if you're treating everybody differently and you got to figure out what you're going to do every single day, what do you do to build a relationship with your guys?
It's just something that happens over time. I hope, you're spending a little bit of time. You're also speaking to their academic counselor. You're speaking to the strength coach. You're speaking to the trainer who spends a lot of time with them. You know what I mean? So you're getting to know them even when you're not talking to them every day. You're getting to know them. You're watching them and how they treat their teammates and how their teammates treat them. You're observing them when you travel and how do they treat other people and how do they interact with people every day. And so you're forming impressions of them every single day, even when you're not interacting, because it's impossible to have individual interactions with 55 guys every day, right? So you're doing the best you can to do that over time, but you're also you're staying aware every day of all right, what how is this guy doing? Is he coming in with high energy? If he's a high energy guy, is his energy low? And if it is, that's when you might want to seek him out, or vice versa, and find out if a guy comes in with big energy, what's going on? What's so good? Why are you so fired up today? How do we replicate that?
There's talking with my own kids, my daughter, I just had a call with her beforehand and she's doing fall ball and she's like, I don't think the coach likes me. She's only playing me a little bit in the second half and she's a freshman and she's only been playing for 2 years. And I was trying to explain to her that that's typical and it's okay. I feel like the translation of information from coach to player, I feel like there's a there's a gap there. And unless the coach is direct, the player is left with a lot of self-doubt, uncertainty. And I'm interested in how you handle that. Like, how is your messaging? Like, how do you go about informing players about their playing time, their status, their position, their rank on the team? Because they all want to know.
If I was to try to spin it in a positive way, I'd say nobody ever accused me of not being direct. They probably too direct, probably not,
direct enough.
Probably not taking enough time to soften the blow. You know what I mean? I give it to them straight, and I think they know that and believe that. I also try to hopefully have a situation where they'll come see me if they don't understand that. And
you think they feel comfortable doing that with you? You feel like that it's clear enough that they can come approach you without any sort of retribution or bad feelings?
Yes, I do think that's true. Do I think that kids take advantage of that enough? No, I don't. I think they're reluctant to do that.
Would you recommend kids do that more?
Yeah, kids don't want to be seen as a complainer, so they don't want to come in, because if you're coming in, it's usually because things aren't going as well as you want them to. And so if they come in, they don't want to be seen as a guy coming in and bitching and complaining and trying to talk his way onto the field. And I respect that. At the same time, sometimes clarity, is what you need, so that you can go back and feel better about what you're doing and where you need to go. We have the formal meetings where, we sit down with the guys and talk to them about, like, we'll do it at the end of fall ball here. We end fall ball in another week, and then we'll spend a week or so, having meetings with each guy individually. The whole staff will sit in there and we'll talk to them and make sure that they leave there at least understanding how we see them and what we think they need to do, what the steps are for them to move forward. But that covers one part of it. That doesn't cover the more personal side of, do they feel valued? Do they feel seen, on a daily basis and all that? And again, I don't know. I wish if I had a grand answer for that, maybe I would retire and start writing books.
It is. So I am curious. You can help me out with this aspect, though, because a lot of players feel this way, and you said it perfectly. They don't want to look like they're a complainer, but they need to advocate for themselves if they don't think somebody else is. So how would you like a player to approach you? Like, what would in the form of a question? And how would you like them to phrase it, or what recommendations would you give players as far as approaching their coaches?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, again, the direct is best, come in, get a meeting or find a time where it's just the two of you, so you can concentrate on the message, make sure that you're hearing what they're saying and vice versa. But I think then it's just a very direct thing. I want more. I want more out of this. I want more playing time. I want more, from the experience, whatever it is that they have to say. How do I do that? Help me do that, because that's what I'm willing to do the work, but I'm not sure how to get there. And can you help me get there? And I think there's no coach that, worth his salt that wouldn't say, let's talk about that, because that's not somebody being selfish. But that is, you want all your kids to have aspirations, personal as well as team wide, and or else you're not going to be very motivated on a daily basis, right? So I don't have any problem with somebody being direct about that. Like, help me get what I want, and I'll help you get what and our team get what we want, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's important, Coach, and I'm glad you said that, because I think a lot of kids don't know how to do it. They're not really sure, and if they're already insecure about about just their playing or their worth, then they're kind of going to be probably real cautious and nervous about approaching the coach. So I think you said it perfectly.
It's a hard thing to do, though, Christian, because you don't always have the answer for a kid. Sometimes the answer is you're not as good as the guy in front of you,
and that's fine. I think that should be fine. And then it's up to you, right? I mean, that to me is, they may disagree with you, but it doesn't matter. You're the coach. You're making the decisions.
Yeah, no, that's right. All right. So if you're not going to surpass that guy, you got to find another way to add value. Get out from behind that guy. Stop trying to take that as your path. See if there's another path where you can add value to the team, and maybe that gets you what you want.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. There's just a couple more and I think I just thought it was, I wanted to ask you what the leaders on your team, what do they all have in common?
Wow. I would say, first of all, they're passionate. They love what they do. They want to be great at it. And that resonates with everything that they do. So they're leaders by example, and because people respect them and respect their integrity and working towards something that means so much to them, it's so important to them. I think that's one thing. I think their selflessness is another. That they're always willing to look beyond themselves and their own little successes or failures, and recognize that they're leaders, and that they've got a responsibility to everybody to keep an eye out on the bigger picture, and to do that well. And they're willing. They have some courage. They're willing to hold people accountable, and have tough conversations with people, but also willing to be vulnerable and allow people to see them, and see their uncertainties, or the things that make them more authentic and more human, that people can relate to. So I would say those are three characteristics that all of our really good leaders have had.
Do your best players have to be your most vocal?
No, they don't have to be. It's nice when they are, but you know what? We had a captain last year who never played for us, and he was as good a captain as we've ever had. Because,
wait, he didn't play during the games. He was just a captain, but he didn't play.
He was a captain, but our guys voted him as a captain because they all loved him and respected him, but he never got into the games. But he was such a good person. He cared about the guys, in the locker room. He did a great job of making sure that people were being seen and heard. Make sure that the guys who were on the scout squad, that they saw the value in what they were doing every day, because it's easy to think, oh, nobody sees me here. I'm just doing this thing and nobody sees me. And he did a great job of making sure that they were recognized and valued, and so he was a tremendous leader, as good as I've been around, from within the team, without ever being the guy in the front of the room that everybody was following out the door because they were a great player.
Wow, that's a great story. I love stuff like that. That's just great. Kudos to him. Probably the future leader of the free world at some point in time.
No question about it. Max Manek, keep your eye out for that kid.
Yeah.
He's going to be something in this world.